She cleaned floors for 4 years without anyone learning her name. While Navy SEALs planned their next operations in the briefing rooms of Naval Special Warfare Command, Elena Voss pushed her mop cart through corridors, invisible as shadows. They saw her as just another civilian contractor, a quiet woman who kept the base spotless and never spoke unless spoken to. But when enemy divers breached the harbor perimeter during a classified briefing, and elite warriors scrambled for defensive positions, Elena didn't run toward the exits like other civilians. Instead, she moved toward the armory with the fluid precision of someone who had done this before. What the SEALs discovered about their silent cleaning lady would rewrite everything they thought they knew about the most classified underwater operations in military history. The first hint of dawn barely touches the horizon when Elena Voss parks her beaten Toyota Corolla in the civilian contractor lot of Naval Special Warfare Command San Diego. 0445 hours. Same routine for 4 years running. She moves with economic efficiency, gathering her identification badge and worn duffel bag containing cleaning supplies. The security guard offers the same disinterested nod he's given her for 1,460 consecutive mornings. Elena navigates the maze of corridors with quiet purpose. At 34, compact and weathered by years of work, she possesses the kind of unremarkable appearance that allows her to blend seamlessly into any environment. Her dark hair is always pulled back in a practical ponytail, her uniform clean but worn, her movements deliberate but unassuming. She has perfected the art of occupying space without claiming it. The first floor houses administrative offices and briefing rooms. Elena begins her morning routine, methodically cleaning each space with practiced efficiency. Her movements follow patterns developed over years of muscle memory, but her eyes constantly assess her environment with unconscious precision. She notices details others miss: a chair positioned at an unusual angle, papers left in specific arrangements, coffee cups that reveal who stayed late and who arrived early. When she enters briefing room Alpha, still empty at this hour, Elena's hands pause for just a moment over the tactical maps spread across the conference table. Her fingers trace underwater approach routes with unconscious familiarity before she catches herself and returns to cleaning. The maps detail harbor defenses, depth charges, underwater surveillance patterns. Information that would mean nothing to a civilian cleaner, but everything to someone with specific training. Commander Sarah Mitchell arrives early, as always, carrying classified folders and a steaming cup of coffee. Elena immediately shifts her posture, shoulders hunching slightly, movements becoming more hurried, less confident. It's subtle camouflage, designed to project the image of a civilian contractor eager to avoid interfering with important military business. "Morning, Elena," Mitchell says absently, focused on spreading documents across the freshly cleaned table. Elena nods silently, gathering her supplies. She's learned that minimal interaction serves her purposes best. The less memorable she appears, the more invisible she becomes. And invisibility has been her goal for 4 long years. As she moves through the morning routine, cleaning adjacent offices and corridors, conversations drift from behind partially closed doors. Mission briefings, personnel reports, operational updates. Elena processes the information automatically, filing details with the unconscious efficiency of someone trained to gather intelligence. She doesn't realize she's doing it anymore. Old habits die hard. Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez emerges from his office, nearly colliding with Elena's cart. "Sorry about that," he says with genuine courtesy. Elena meets his eyes briefly, nodding acknowledgement before looking away. Rodriguez has always treated her with more respect than most, something she notices and files away without conscious thought. The morning progresses predictably. Elena works through the administrative wing, then moves to the training facilities. Here, the atmosphere changes. SEALs prepare for morning PT, their conversations louder, more casual. filled with the dark humor that bonds elite units. Elena becomes even more invisible here, if such a thing is possible. She cleans around them like water flowing around stones. "Thompson, your dive times are still shit," someone calls out, generating laughter. "Better than Rodriguez's land navigation," comes the reply. More laughter. Elena continues her work, but something in the conversation causes her to pause. Dive times. Underwater navigation. Her hands still for just a moment before resuming their methodical cleaning. These discussions trigger something deep in her memory, something she spent 4 years trying to suppress. By noon, the base hums with activity. Elena works through the cafeteria, cleaning tables where SEALs discuss everything from family problems to classified operations. She has developed selective hearing, automatically filtering sensitive information while maintaining her facade of disinterested civilian contractor. It's a skill that once kept her alive in hostile territory. Now it just keeps her employed, and anonymous. The afternoon brings her to the equipment storage areas, vast warehouses filled with specialized gear. Diving equipment, underwater demolition tools, rebreathers, underwater communication systems. Elena cleans methodically around these items, but anyone watching closely might notice the way her eyes automatically catalog equipment conditions. Note missing items, assess readiness levels. She doesn't realize she's doing it. The assessment happens at a subconscious level, trained responses that 4 years of civilian life haven't entirely erased. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane finds her in Storage Bay 7, replacing supplies in her cleaning cart. Kane has always watched her with slightly more attention than the others, something that makes Elena unconsciously uncomfortable. There's an assessing quality to his observation that suggests he sees more than her carefully constructed facade. "Reveals, Elena," he says in his gravelly voice. "Equipment's been going missing from this bay. You notice anything unusual during your rounds?" She meets his gaze briefly, shakes her head once, then returns to her work. Kane continues watching her for several seconds before nodding and moving on. But Elena senses his continued suspicion, filed away for future reference. As afternoon fades toward evening, Elena completes her rounds and prepares to leave. She moves through the same corridors she's cleaned thousands of times, past the same offices, around the same personnel. 4 years of routine have made her as much a fixture as the furniture itself. Invisible, forgettable, exactly as she intended. But as she reaches the parking lot, something feels different. A subtle change in the rhythm of the base, a tension she can't quite identify. Elena pauses beside her Toyota, keys in hand, and looks back at the naval facility. Her trained instincts whisper warnings she spent years trying to ignore. She drives away, but the feeling follows her home to her small apartment overlooking the harbor. As she prepares dinner in her modest kitchen, Elena finds herself standing at the window, studying the water with unconscious tactical assessment. Harbor approaches, security blind spots, ideal insertion routes. Information that has no relevance to a civilian contractor, but everything to do with who she used to be. That night, Elena lies in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling that something is building. 4 years of careful anonymity have given her a peaceful existence, free from the complexities and dangers of her previous life. But peace, she's learning, can be as fragile as it is precious. The next morning arrives with unseasonable fog rolling in from the Pacific, shrouding the naval base in gray moisture that muffles sound and reduces visibility. Elena arrives for her usual shift, but something immediately feels different. Security is heightened. Guards are more alert. Personnel move with increased urgency. As she begins her morning routine, fragments of conversation reveal the source of tension. Intelligence reports indicate possible hostile activity in the area. All personnel have been placed on elevated readiness. Training exercises have been suspended in favor of defensive preparations. Elena processes, This information while maintaining her facade of disinterested civilian contractor. But beneath the surface, systems she spent years suppressing begin to activate. Threat assessment protocols, tactical awareness, operational readiness. She fights against these responses, reminding herself that she's no longer part of that world. During her lunch break, while eating a sandwich in the small contractor break room, Elena overhears Commander Mitchell briefing several officers. The words drift through the thin walls. Underwater approach routes, harbor defenses, potential infiltration, Her sandwich turns to cardboard in her mouth. Underwater infiltration. The specialty that had once made her the most feared combat diver in naval special warfare. The skill set that had earned her recognition, respect, and ultimately trauma so severe it drove her from service entirely. Elena forces herself to finish eating, to maintain normal routines, but her hands tremble slightly as she disposes of her lunch tray. 4 years of peace, 4 years of anonymity, and now the past threatens to surface like a diver breaking through calm water. Asterisk. That afternoon, while cleaning Briefing Room Alpha, Elena finds herself alone with tactical maps that detail the harbor's underwater defenses. Her eyes move across the documents with professional assessment, automatically identifying weaknesses, potential approach routes, optimal insertion points. She catches herself memorizing classified information and forces her attention back to cleaning supplies. But it's too late. The switch has been flipped. The systems are coming online. As evening approaches, Elena prepares to leave as usual. But as she reaches the parking lot, alarms begin sounding across the base. Not drill alarms, real alerts. Emergency protocols activating. Personnel running toward defensive positions. Through the fog rolling off the harbor, Elena sees searchlights cutting through the darkness. Harbor patrol boats racing toward unknown contacts. The unmistakable signs of a real security breach. Other civilian contractors run toward the exits, following evacuation procedures. Elena starts toward her car, then stops. Through the fog and darkness, her trained eye catches something others miss. Movement in the water. Subtle disturbances that shouldn't be there. Signs that someone very skilled is approaching the base from the sea. Decision time. Elena Voss, civilian contractor, would get in her car and drive away, following proper evacuation procedures. But the woman she used to be, the combat diver who had earned a dozen commendations and a medical discharge for psychological trauma, she would do something different. For a moment, Elena stands frozen between two identities, two possible futures. Then training takes over, and she moves toward the base armory with the fluid efficiency of someone who has done this many times before. Security is focused on the harbor perimeter. The armory is temporarily unguarded. Elena's access badge still works in zones it shouldn't, a bureaucratic oversight from her transition to civilian status. She enters the weapons storage area with practiced stealth, moving directly to equipment she hasn't touched in 4 years. Her hands remember what her mind has tried to forget. Underwater rebreather systems, waterproof weapons, diving equipment. Designed for combat operations. She dresses with mechanical precision, muscle memory overriding conscious thought. The gear fits like it was made for her because it was made for her. Back when she was Chief Petty Officer Elena Voss, the Navy's premier underwater infiltration specialist, thought through the armory windows. Searchlights sweep the harbor while patrol. Boats converge on suspected contact points. But Elena's trained eye sees what they're missing. The attackers aren't where the defenders think they are. They're using the fog, the current patterns, the blind spots in surveillance coverage. Professional work by people who know exactly what they're doing. Elena seals her rebreather system and moves toward the water. 4 years ago, she had sworn never to enter combat again after what happened in the South China Sea. The mission that had saved American lives but cost her psychological stability. The underwater engagement that had earned her a medal she couldn't bear to look at, and trauma that still woke her up screaming. But tonight, watching enemy divers approach the base where she had found 4 years of peace, Elena realizes some oaths are meant to be broken. She slips into the harbor water with barely a splash, disappearing beneath the surface like a ghost returning to its natural element. The fog above becomes irrelevant. Down here, in the dark water she once commanded, Elena Voss stops running from who she used to be. The transformation is immediate and total. Civilian contractor Elena had been careful, invisible, afraid. Combat diver Elena is something else entirely. Precise, deadly, completely at home in an environment that would kill most people in minutes. She moves through the water with predatory grace, every sense focused on the hunt. Her sonar equipment, silent running to avoid detection, begins painting a picture of the underwater battlefield. 4 contacts moving toward the harbors. Critical infrastructure. Professional spacing, coordinated movement, high-end equipment. These aren't amateurs or terrorists. They're enemy special forces, possibly state-sponsored, conducting a mission that requires the kind of skills Elena once possessed. She angles toward the nearest contact, moving through the black water with lethal purpose. Her target is skilled, but Elena is hunting in her natural habitat now, using instincts honed through years of combat operations. She closes the distance with patient precision, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When it comes, the engagement is swift and silent. Her target never knows what hit him. One moment he's swimming toward his objective. The next, he's sinking toward the harbor floor, eliminated with the clinical efficiency that once made Elena the most feared combat diver in naval special warfare. Above the surface, chaos continues. Patrol boats search areas where the enemy used to be. Searchlights probe empty water. Radio chatter reports negative contact, confusion about target locations, requests for additional assets. The defenders are fighting the wrong battle in the wrong place. Below, Elena continues her hunt. 3 more contacts, 3 more threats to eliminate. Each engagement tests skills she's tried to forget, pushes her back into a mental state she's spent years escaping. But with each eliminated threat, she feels something she hadn't expected. Not the crushing weight of taking lives, but the satisfaction of protecting something precious. The base above isn't just a military installation. It's been her sanctuary, her refuge from the darkness of her past. These people, who barely knew her name, had given her 4 years of peace. Now it's time to return the favor. The second engagement proves more challenging. Her target is alert, perhaps warned by his missing teammate's failure to report. Elena approaches from below, using the harbor floor's irregular bottom to mask her approach. When she strikes, her target fights back with professional skill, turning the encounter into a deadly underwater ballet that tests every technique she's ever learned. But Elena is fighting for more than mission success. She's fighting for the right to return to obscurity, to reclaim the peaceful existence these intruders have threatened. The engagement ends with her victory, but not before her opponent manages to trigger an emergency beacon. Above, the harbor explodes into activity. The enemy knows they've been detected. Their covert insertion has become a fighting retreat. Elena hears the distinctive sound of their extraction vehicles starting up. Submarine motors designed for quiet operation, but audible to her trained ear. 2 more contacts remain, but they're moving toward the extraction point now, their mission apparently compromised. Elena faces a choice: let them escape and return to her safe existence, or pursue them and risk everything she's built over 4 years of careful anonymity. The decision makes itself. These weren't casual intruders or random terrorists. They were professionals conducting reconnaissance or sabotage against the base that had become her sanctuary. If they escaped, they would return better prepared, possibly successful in whatever they had planned. Elena pursues. The chase leads her away from the harbor, into deeper water where the enemy believes they have the advantage. But these are Elena's waters now, every current and thermal layer as familiar as the corridors she's cleaned for 4 years. She uses the underwater terrain to her advantage, closing on her targets with methodical precision. The third engagement occurs near the submarine extraction vehicle, a sophisticated craft designed for special operations. Elena's target is covering the approach to the submarine, providing security while his teammate presumably loads critical intelligence or equipment. Elena eliminates him with professional efficiency, but not before he manages to alert the submarine. Crewed out suddenly, Elena faces a new problem. The submarine begins emergency dive procedures, preparing to escape with whatever intelligence they've gathered. If it succeeds, her sacrifice of anonymity will be meaningless. The threat will remain, possibly increased by whatever information the enemy has obtained. Elena swims toward the diving submarine with desperate speed, pushing her rebreather system to its limits. She reaches the vessel just as it submerges, grabbing hold of external fittings designed for special operations personnel. As the submarine descends, carrying her into the deeper water beyond the harbor, Elena realizes she's committed herself to a course of action that will change everything. The fourth and final engagement takes place on the submarine itself, a running battle across its hull while the vessel tries to escape to international waters. Elena's opponent is the remaining special operations diver, fighting to protect his team's extraction while she battles to prevent their escape. They struggle across the submarine's exterior in a deadly embrace, each seeking the advantage that will end the battle. In the end, Elena's greater experience and desperate motivation carry the day. Her opponent falls away into the dark water, and she finds herself alone on the submarine's hull with the power to prevent its escape. The demolition charges she carries are designed for harbor defense, but they'll serve her purpose now. The submarine dies in a fountain of bubbles and twisted metal, carrying whatever secrets it held to the bottom of the Pacific. Elena rides the explosion upward, using her remaining air to reach the surface as debris rains around her. When she breaks the surface, the harbor is ablaze with lights. Search and rescue vessels converge on her position, drawn by the underwater explosion. As strong hands pull her from the water, Elena realizes her 4 years of anonymity are over. There will be no explaining away her presence here, no returning to invisible contractor status. Commander Mitchell stands on the deck of the rescue vessel, studying Elena with new recognition. "Chief Petty Officer Elena Voss," she says quietly. "I thought you looked familiar." Elena nods wearily, water streaming from her gear. "Ma'am." The Elena Voss who disappeared after the South China Sea incident. The combat diver who went missing from the Naval Register 4 years ago. "Yes, ma'am." Mitchell's expression combines professional respect with personal concern. "What were you doing out there tonight, Chief?" Elena looks back toward the base, where her cleaning supplies still wait in their cart, where her quiet existence has been permanently shattered by necessity and choice. "Protecting my home, ma'am. The debriefing takes hours." Elena sits in the same conference room she's cleaned hundreds of times, now wearing Navy fatigues instead of civilian contractor coveralls, answering questions about the engagement, her background, her 4 years of self-imposed exile from naval service. The story emerges piece by piece. The South China Sea mission that had gone wrong despite her success. Enemy divers eliminated, American sailors saved, but psychological trauma so severe that Elena had quietly resigned from special warfare rather than face mandatory counseling that would have ended her career anyway. A bureaucratic oversight that had allowed her to maintain security clearance while working as a civilian contractor, hiding in plain sight where no one thought to look for a decorated combat diver. "You saved this base tonight," Commander Mitchell tells her as dawn breaks through the briefing room windows. Those were Chinese special forces conducting reconnaissance for a larger operation. The intelligence they gathered would have compromised our entire Pacific Fleet posture. Elena nods silently. She had recognized the equipment, the tactics, the professional skill level. State-sponsored operators conducting strategic intelligence gathering or preparation for sabotage. Not the kind of threat that would have given up after one failed attempt. You could return to active duty, Mitchell continues. Your record was exemplary before the South China Sea incident, with proper counseling and evaluation, ... No, ma'am. Elena's response is immediate and certain. I left service for good reasons. Those reasons haven't changed. Then what do you want to do? Elena considers the question, looking around the briefing room where she spent so many mornings cleaning in invisible silence. Her sanctuary has been compromised, but perhaps there's a middle path between complete anonymity and full military service. I'd like to continue working here, ma'am. Not as active duty, but as a consultant. Harbor security specialist. Someone who understands underwater threats and can help prevent them. Mitchell nods slowly. I think we can arrange that. Over the following weeks, Elena's role at the base transforms completely. No more cleaning corridors or maintaining invisibility. Instead, she finds herself consulting on harbor defense systems, training SEAL teams in advanced underwater combat techniques, sharing expertise gained through years of specialized operations. The adjustment isn't easy. Elena has grown accustomed to anonymity, to the peace that comes from being unnoticed and unremembered. Now she faces constant interaction, professional recognition, the weight of others' expectations. It's a different kind of pressure from combat operations, but pressure nonetheless. Lieutenant Rodriguez seeks her out one afternoon as she reviews underwater surveillance systems. You know, he says conversationally, I always thought there was more to you than met the eye. Elena looks up from her technical manuals. How so? The way you moved, the way you observed things. Too precise for a civilian contractor. Too aware. For someone without training, she nods thoughtfully. I tried to suppress it, but old habits are hard to break. Good thing they are. You saved a lot of lives the other night. Elena returns to her manuals, but Rodriguez's words stay with her. For 4 years, she had viewed her instincts and training as burdens to be hidden, sources of shame and trauma to be suppressed. Perhaps they could be something else, tools for protection, skills that could save lives rather than take them. The transformation takes months. Elena gradually accepts her new role, finding ways to use her expertise constructively rather than destructively. She develops new training protocols for underwater security, designs improved harbor defense systems, shares knowledge that makes other operators more effective and safer. Chief Kane approaches her one evening as she finishes reviewing patrol reports. His expression combines professional respect with personal curiosity. I knew there was something different about you, he says without preamble. 4 years I watched you, thinking you were just another civilian contractor who paid attention to details. What made you suspicious? The way you moved around diving equipment. Too familiar, too comfortable, like you belonged there. Elena considers this, remembering her unconscious assessments of gear readiness, her automatic cataloging of equipment conditions. I thought I was being careful. You were. But careful in ways that suggested training, not just civilian caution. Kane pauses, studying her thoughtfully. You know, there are others like you. Former special operations personnel who left service for various reasons, but still have skills the Navy needs. We've been discussing a program to bring them back as consultants rather than active duty. The idea intrigues Elena. Perhaps her situation isn't as unique as she'd thought. Perhaps there are others struggling with similar issues, former warriors, seeking ways to serve without returning to the darkness of direct combat operations. I'd be interested in helping with that program, she tells Kane, 6 months after the harbor incident. Elena stands in the same briefing room where her old life ended and her new one began. But instead of cleaning around the edges, she stands at the front of the room, addressing a group of SEAL candidates about underwater security threats. Her presentation covers enemy capabilities, infiltration techniques, defensive countermeasures. The young operators listen with intense attention, recognizing expertise when they encounter it. Elena realizes she's found something she hadn't expected, a way to use her skills that builds rather than destroys, that protects rather than eliminates. After the briefing, Commander Mitchell approaches her. "You've adapted well to your new role. Thank you, ma'am. It's different from what I expected." "Different how?" Elena considers the question, looking around the briefing room where she's undergone such transformation. "I spent 4 years trying to hide from who I was, thinking my training and experience were sources of shame. Now I'm learning they can be sources of strength, ways to help others succeed." "Any regrets about giving up your anonymity?" "Sometimes," Elena admits. "There was peace in being invisible, safety in being forgotten. But there was also emptiness. This feels more complete." As evening falls, Elena completes her duties and prepares to leave the base. But instead of hurrying toward her car with downcast eyes, she walks with quiet confidence, acknowledging greetings from personnel who now know her name and respect her expertise. She drives home along the same route she's taken for 4 years, but the journey feels different. The harbor lights reflect off calm water that no longer holds the promise of anonymity, but instead represents a domain where she's found new purpose. Elena Voss, former combat diver, former invisible civilian contractor, current harbor security specialist, has discovered something she didn't know she was seeking: a way to be herself without apology or concealment. At her apartment, Elena prepares dinner and stands at her window overlooking the harbor. But instead of studying approach routes with unconscious tactical assessment, she watches the lights of patrol boats conducting security sweeps she helped design. The water holds different meanings now, not just memories of past trauma, but possibilities for future service. That night, Elena sleeps peacefully for the first time in 4 years, her dreams free from the underwater battles that once haunted them. She has found her way back from exile, not to her old life, but to a new one that honors both who she was and who she has chosen to become. The next morning arrives clear and bright, San Diego sunshine cutting through the marine layer to illuminate the naval base that has become both her sanctuary and her purpose. Elena Voss drives through the contractor gate for what she knows will be one of the last times, transitioning tomorrow to her new consultant status with appropriate security, credentials, and base access. The guard who has nodded absently at her for 4 years looks up with recognition and respect. "Morning, Chief Voss." "Morning, Petty Officer Martinez." It's a small change,